By any metric, the presentation in which Meta debuted its name was a complete disaster.
Like, what did we just watch for the last hour and 22 minutes?
But amongst all the roasting of Mark Zuckerberg, I feel a story has been missed by the wider public. You see, most people are under the impression that Mark Zuckerberg had entirely made up his metaverse. Some, more familiar with the term, thought he'd stolen the term from a niche community and horribly butchered it. However, the full story is actually a little bit more complicated, because he didn't read Snow Crash one day and take the word metaverse and twist it in his robot brain and to spit out whatever we're witnessing now. He actually took the corporate vision of the metaverse from somebody else. Somebody who based their ideas on the ideas from the metaverse from a different niche community. You see, this is the end result of a very strange game of telephone that has slowly distorted the word metaverse so much that now even some dedicated VR enthusiasts don't know what it means anymore. So in order to understand what the metaverse is, how much of it is a scam, and how it'll actually affect the future, we have to take a journey back through the game of telephone and understand how each step changed the word metaverse to fit the ideals of the next community who picked it up. Now, the idea of interactive virtual worlds predates even Snow Crash, the book in which the term metaverse is credited to be invented. And it's been toyed with in various forms over the years. Go back and watch old ads speculating about the future and you'll find some good and bad predictions. So I'm gonna start at the launch of the modern VR era with the start of the very first VR headsets, which followed from the Oculus Kickstarter. When the first modern generation of virtual reality headsets entered the market, the wide-eyed enthusiasts of this new medium tried to picture what the future would be. Partially inspired by recent works like Ready Player One and Sword Art Online, they imagined an interactive and 3D internet that was more of a place than a webpage, and took inspiration from old ideas of how the internet would be. These ideas were sort of collected and branded with one single word taken from Snow Crash: the metaverse. Trying to pin down an exact definition of the metaverse in this community was difficult, but the ideas created in it went on to influence many social VR platforms like VRChat and ESVR, where experiments in what a virtual world can be continue to this day. The community valued an open and free internet, closer to the 1.0 version of the internet than the one we have today, where traffic is concentrated into the hands of a few. Some even thought that it should imitate the book and be a shelter from capitalism itself. Now, these experiments into trying to push what is possible in VR has resulted in an endless amount of small communities which continue to this day. There are dance clubs, a sign language community, many other language clubs, a bunch of drinking and party communities, and many more. All trying to see how virtual reality makes certain online social activities more fun. Sure, right now there are a lot of sharp edges and BS that you have to navigate to even find something that might be just mildly interesting. But like the early days of the 80s and 90s internet, it was just a harbinger of things to come. But they weren't the only ones talking about the possibilities of the metaverse. Today's ideas about the future are worth a lot of money, both to tech companies and investors looking for the next unicorn. Just knowing a glimpse of what the future holds is worth billions. And even though we're in a financial winter that's making people throw their money at potential unicorns less often, tech companies are still making moves to prepare for a potential future. So you shouldn't be surprised that the metaverse was an idea that moved to a talking point of big tech and its investors. And it is in this environment that Matthew Ball's Metaverse Primer is created, an online essay attempting to take the vision of the metaverse and actually sit down and give concrete answers to the questions that hold it back from being implemented. Matthew Ball decided to rethink what the metaverse actually is. To do so, he split the internet into 4 eras. The first era is sort of a pre-internet, in the mainframe era, which was limited to massive machines and universities trying to establish a single connection protocol. The second, more familiar era, was the early internet in the 90s and 2000s, which was limited to desktop computers, as that was the only device that you could connect to the internet with. He dubs this the desktop era. So the internet was limited to a small audience and wasn't mobile. In this era, Microsoft established itself early and became the most powerful technology company in the world. Then the smartphone changed the power structures of the tech world. Instead of Apple being this underdog operating system, they came to dominate this era. Google was no longer just a search engine company with some other cool stuff. They now owned one of the most popular operating systems in the world. The internet changed as more users were pulled in, and we could use the internet in new ways. This is a smartphone era of the internet, which gave a few tech companies who invested early, like Apple, Google, and Facebook, a lot of wealth and power, and permanently shifted the entire world's culture. He asserts that the next era, which will once again change the balance of power, will be heralded in by the widespread adoption of virtual reality and augmented reality. And of course, the word he uses to describe this next internet era is the metaverse. Instead of the metaverse being a vague idea that's just always on the horizon, the metaverse is just the internet that is designed to serve virtual reality and later augmented reality. Various companies would contribute to it until we get the full metaverse inspired by the original vision the community came up with. To Matthew, there is not a metaverse, not multiple metaverses, just the metaverse. Just like there is only the internet. Now, you've probably figured out that Matthew isn't doing this just because he believes in the metaverse. He's a venture capitalist who runs a metaverse-themed ETF, and he provides consulting to big companies who want to learn about it. He has a massive financial incentive to make his vision of the metaverse become a reality, and to be seen as the top expert on it. It would be easy to oversimplify things and paint him as a villain who corporatized the metaverse. However, Matthew does favor a metaverse that is more open and less controlled by platforms like our current internet. That is shaped exclusively by the whims of a few platform holders, notably a few dominant cell phone operating systems. Mostly because he sees this as an obstacle to the growth of the metaverse as a whole. One of the key ideas he pushes for is interoperability, which roughly means technology in the metaverse should be compatible with as many portions as possible. There should be more united standards that work across all companies, like email, rather than working only within their own network, like something like WhatsApp does. There are many components to Matthew's idea which I'm not going to go over. And if you know about the ideas Matthew talks about, you will start to see them everywhere when a company talks about the metaverse. I'd say while the VR community disagrees all the time what the metaverse means, Silicon Valley has already adopted this definition. Matthew's influence on Mark Zuckerberg is hardly a secret. The day after the infamous Connect, he went on a podcast with him. You can hear him use the terms for the Metaverse Primer throughout the presentation.
We believe the metaverse will be the successor to the mobile internet. In order to unlock the potential of the metaverse, there needs to be interoperability. And these are some of the basic concepts for the metaverse.
And he's mentioned the essay directly a couple of times. So what convinced Mark Zuckerberg to adopt this vision and make it such a dramatic shift? Well, Facebook is dying, Mark Zuckerberg is in a tough spot, their reputation is terrible, and all their mistakes and mismanagement are catching up to them. So if Mark Zuckerberg sticks to the status quo, Facebook dies a slow, painful death and slowly shrinks the rest of the company along with it. So after he got exposed to Matthew's idea of the metaverse, he went all in on it. They either become leaders of this new era or they die. However, there's one problem. Matthew is focused entirely on the business and technical aspects of the metaverse. He doesn't predict what will actually be appealing in this new era to the common consumer, because that's not his target audience. And he asserts that that's impossible to predict. He's trying to figure out the groundwork for what's needed for the dreams of the metaverse to become a reality, not actually what those dreams should be. And Mark Zuckerberg doesn't seem to know what those things should be either. He can't walk onto a virtual stage and convince anyone to be excited about the metaverse, if the only reason he's excited about the metaverse is because it'll make his company a lot of money. To be more specific, the biggest business reasons Mark Zuckerberg is excited is because he'll be able to escape from Apple and Google's thumb and become a platform holder that will take the 30% cut on all profits on his hardware. His company will have a brand new medium to create advertisements for and collect data from. And he'll be able to create any big software product that potentially could take off in VR. Like, I know everyone was focused on the cringy things in the presentation, but I was wondering why wasn't he explaining key concepts like interoperability and the mobile era? Maybe he realized right now Meta was hardly the avatar of these ideas. Explain what interoperability is, and you expose your own anti-consumer practices like locking the PC Oculus store to only Oculus headsets, unless you have something like Revive to go around it. I've come not to expect anything from Facebook, now Meta, but it is a new low that they adopted a vision of the metaverse which was reorganized into something more palatable for the corporate world, and they removed or glossed over any pro-consumer idea within it. Now, Meta may be the loudest and most obnoxious company interested in the metaverse, but they're hardly alone. To go over one example, Epic has already stated a large interest in this vision of the metaverse. Like Meta, they don't like giving phone operating companies a 30% cut of all the money they make on their platform. But unlike Meta, they want to change the rules to be more fair, or at least more fair by their definition. They want a future technology landscape where platform voters have less power and demand less money. That's why they sued Apple. And this is why they're competing with Steam and offering a lower percentage cut. Why are they interested in changing the rules? To keep more of that money Fortnite makes? Well, that doesn't hurt, but I think the main reason is they're the makers of the Unreal Engine. They would love a metaverse that is as wide and open as possible, because the bigger the metaverse is, the more potential customers of the Unreal Engine are out there. The recent tech breakthroughs are also catered to the potential future needs of this iteration of the metaverse. Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to talk about one final jump in the game of Metaverse Telephone and one final new definition of the metaverse, or a couple final definitions. To use this telephone analogy, you know how when you play telephone, there's that one person in the middle who's terrible at communicating, and they add the most errors in the messaging? Well, in our analogy, that's Meta, which is probably why most of the viewers of this video have a definition of the metaverse which is nowhere close to where we started here. It doesn't help that Matthew's era definition of the metaverse can be confusing and easily creep into more pieces of technology. The era is defined by a bundle of technology and apps, but those technology and apps will probably draw their full legacy from earlier eras. But people have been referring to single little pieces of that bundle as a metaverse. First, people started referring to singular social VR platforms like VRChat and Horizon Worlds as a metaverse, which kind of makes sense because they're VR, and I guess that works because that's the biggest place we use VR in the internet. But then people started expanding it to social platforms outside of VR. Then people remembered how in the movie Ready Player One, there was an epic crossover stuff. So crossover stuff, like in Fortnite, that's a metaverse, right? Okay, but also, if you have any piece of IP that is in more than one type of media, well, that's a whole metaverse too. And then everything that was vaguely new in technology and video games, that's all a metaverse. That's now a metaverse. Just everything is a metaverse now, regardless of how much sense it makes. So if you're here because you hate the metaverse, can you quickly do me a favor and specify which metaverse you hate? Because at this point, this stupid game of telephone has destroyed any meaning that world ever had. So, in the end, why care about this mess? Why talk about an idea pushed by the most unliked man in Silicon Valley? Well, as I hope I've demonstrated here, the metaverse is a bigger idea than any one social VR app or piece of hardware or company. It's an idea that started as a naive vision from enthusiastic VR users, but ended up as a tool different individuals and companies use to predict the future that might be possible from the widespread adoption of VR and AR. Each of those individual predictions have spun onto a tangled web of ideas that have provided a roadmap for what the future could possibly be, but they could be wrong. In fact, major components are likely incorrect. For example, Matthew brings up using NFTs to make it so you can bring a gun skin into different games. This has been debunked by multiple game developers who have explained the technical, game design, and economic reasons this doesn't work. Debunking predictions like this that Matthew, Mark, or other individuals make it easy to toss out the entire metaverse theory. But before you do that, I want you to keep one thing in mind. The core of the metaverse hypothesis in any of the definitions we've gone over is one single assumption, one core prediction that must be true for anything else to work, and that is virtual reality and augmented reality will become more widespread over time and change the world. If you think that's not true, there's nothing else worth talking about here. And the metaverse is a pile of garbage predictions to you. But if you've used the virtual reality and feel it's a window into what the future could bring, then pay attention to this conversation that's happening with or without you, because the ideas aren't going away. even if the word metaverse itself dies thanks to Meta. I think people are missing the point when they understandably bash Mark's metaverse, like for example, take a look at the comment section of any video talking about the metaverse, and you should come across this comment. We already have a metaverse, it's insert game here. If you're talking about any kind of virtual worlds, there is a legacy of games that trace their full ancestry all the way back to MUDs in the 80s. The ability to create social VR virtual worlds is nothing new. What would be new is how we interact with them, how we perceive to them, and most importantly, how large the audience that interacts with them is. To use an example from the mobile era, the widespread usage of social media and its effect is a key thing we associate with that era. But not only were sites like Facebook and Twitter already in existence before smartphones existed, before them, internet forums existed for stuff like video games. But nonetheless, the explosive expansion of social media in the mobile age dwarfed anything which had come before. Every company which is obsessed with the metaverse is trying to find what will have similar growth in an era where VR and AR are widespread. What I've talked to you about here is just a simplified vertical slice of the influential ideas out there. Matthew's ideas alone could be their own video series, picking apart the good and the bad. Like I've said, this word and the ideas behind it are one giant mess right now. But if you think VR is the future, it's unavoidable. And I think it's worth rolling up your sleeves to try to organize what's good for the public, what's bad for the public, and why. Thanks for watching. Honestly, the concepts I tried to go over in this video are bigger than this video could possibly be. So why don't I cite some videos for you to go watch if you actually want to look into this more. If you want a better idea of what the ideas of the free metaverse are, or that sort of like free metaverse idea, go watch Making Sense of VRChat, the metaverse people actually like by People Make Games. I'll link it in the description. Also, if you want to read Matthew Ball's ideas from the man himself, you can either watch this video from Big Think or go directly to the Metaverse Primer. It's available online for free. You can judge for yourself whether or not he is a genius or moron or, of course, something in between.